and thank you for joining us at BATV's Fall Toast Studios inside Batavia High School. My name is Kathy Balcazar, editor of the King County Chronicle, and I will be your host and moderator of Viewpoint. Viewpoint is a roundtable talk show that highlights a specific topic that is being discussed in our community. In today's show, we will discuss the Campana building proposal. Here to participate in this discussion are Laura Newman, City of Batavia Administrator, David Block, Director of Development for Evergreen Real Estate Group, and Margaret Egan with Preservation Partners. Thank you for joining us today. Our first question is for you, David. Please tell us what Evergreen Real Estate is proposing for the Campana building.
Sure. Well, thanks, Kathy. Thanks, BATV, for having us on the show. We are proposing the mixed-use redevelopment of the Campana building to a complex that will include some of the existing commercial tenants that are there and 80 mixed-income loft-style apartment units. So what that means is that some of the building will remain with the tenants who are there, and some of the building will have new apartments inserted into it that will be mostly two-story apartment units. So there'll be a living space and a kitchen, in some cases bedrooms on the first floor, and then there'll be an upper-level bedroom on the second floor within each unit. It's a very large building. The whole complex is about 130,000 square feet, so there's a lot of area, a lot of volume to take up, and that's one of the challenges of the building. It's a very challenging historic preservation undertaking in a lot of different ways, not the least of which, in case you've driven by it and noticed it, there aren't any windows certainly in the front part of the building. And that was one of the biggest challenges that we had to face in dealing with this, was from a technical historic preservation perspective, how do you address that? Apartments need light, which the glass block does provide, but apartments also need fresh air. And so we have spent a lot of time negotiating with the state and federal historic preservation officials, but also with the Batavia Historic Preservation Commission, to propose a solution that puts windows below the sill. So the window sills in that building are about at 4 feet. So there's a large area below the sills where we can insert new operable windows, clear windows that you can see through, and those windows are hidden behind a row of landscaping, essentially, so that you can't see them from Route 31, you can't see them from Fabian Parkway, but they do provide fresh air for the units. Meanwhile, in the units, I think people have probably seen some of the rendering. It's pretty spectacular, 16.5-foot ceilings. Each unit is about 1,000 square feet of space, so they are a very interesting, unique kind of dwelling unit, unlike anything else in Batavia, and really unlike, as far as we know, anything else in Greater Chicago. And so we were excited by this challenge. Obviously, we're in the middle of a community conversation about it. Sure.
Margaret, tell us about the history of the Campana building. Who built it, and what was it originally used for?
Okay, great. Thanks, Kathy. The Campana building is a very unique building, not only architecturally and historically. It was designed by Ernest Chase in 1937. It was completed in 1937, and the style is streamlined modern. And the founder of the company was a man by the name of Ernest Oswald. Not Oswald, Oswald. And he specifically said, and I'd like to read this quote, that he wanted an ultra-modern building, quote, efficient and beautiful, the finest toilet goods factory in the world. Now, the company had already started originally in Batavia at another site, but they moved in here in 1937. I think what's interesting about that quote is the word efficient, because it was a very efficient building for that time. It was a highly innovative company in its efficient use of manufacturing and assembly process, and then also it's a very beautiful building. A lot of people it's really like a foundation, a very unique space for the community of Batavia. And when I say beautiful, it really takes you back back to the history of the building, and that is that they manufactured cosmetics. And you have to remember that, you know, in the 1920s and the 1930s, movies were just coming around, and I shouldn't say silent movies, but, you know, they were using cosmetics in movies. And that's how Revlon got started and Maybelline got started, and really the Campana building too. You know, they sold beauty products. Probably the one that they were most famous for was an Italian balm. It was a skin softener. But yeah, it all goes hand in hand, the beauty of the building and the efficiency of it.
Sure.
Very unique for its time. It was also one of the first buildings in the country that had air conditioning. And it was also one of the first buildings in the country where the floor plan for the secretaries was all of this open space. And so what they did, we have a fabulous picture of all the secretaries on one of the floors, and then the boss, I should call it the boss, the executive, the administrators had their buildings on the perimeter of it. So it's very unique.
Wow. And can you tell us about the historical significance today in terms of the architecture and design?
The historical significance of it today in the architecture and the design was that you know, it was just, like I said earlier, it was really the significance of, I guess I would say, a building that has this clean image. Just like with women, you know, if you're going to buy cosmetics, you want this clean and beautiful image. And that was what, you know, it's kind of like when you look at some buildings, the outside of a building will tell you what's going on in the inside. And in this particular building, it's not basically, you know, blaring out at you, but it's saying we have clean lines, we're sanitary, this is what we manufacture, this is what we do, and we do it in this really professional way.
Yeah, thank you. Laura, what are the pros and cons the city, through the Plan Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, and other governing bodies, has been weighing when considering the proposal for the Campana building?
Well, I'd say one of the pros is that, just building upon what Margaret was just speaking of, the beauty of this building, and it really has not had a significant use. It's been underutilized since last it was a factory decades ago. There has actually never been a proposal that was actually handed into the city for us to consider until this project came along. So one of the biggest benefits to us is that this property has been kind of a white elephant, if you will. And now we have a proposal that is consistent with our comprehensive plan. And it's also the idea that this project is affordable housing. I think that many municipalities struggle with maintaining an appropriate level of affordable housing. Batavia at this time does have an appropriate level of affordable housing, but we see growth in our future.
Sure.
And we want to make sure that we stay ahead of that and make sure that we can provide diverse types of housing within our community. So I think it fits in well with that. Perhaps some of the other things to consider, of course, we're adding residents to our community, and we hope that from that they will participate economically in our community as well, shop here as well as live here and work here. Sure, it may be any time a new housing development comes on, it places perhaps a greater strain on our resources, but we really don't feel that this particular use is going to be in any way a significant strain on the resources that we already have.
And would you say the same thing about the traffic that the project might generate?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because in the community conversation, certainly the traffic in that area has been a predominant part of the conversation.
Sure.
The intersection there Route 31 is governed by the Illinois Department of Transportation, and Fabian Parkway is governed by Kane County. So as a municipality, Batavia doesn't have much rights when it comes to the being able to solve the issues that already exist at that intersection. I think everybody recognizes it as a very busy intersection and frankly a very dangerous intersection because of the way that it's oriented.
Sure.
However, one of the issues that is being raised is the additional traffic that would be created from this particular development. And because it's a mixed-use development, it could be that someone would come in with entirely a commercial or a retail use. And those two types of uses, studies show, would generate far more traffic than a residential use.
Sure.
And so of the types of development that could happen here, this is probably one of those that brings the least additional traffic.
Okay, thank you. David, what are the factors that are considered when a building has a new proposal for reuse, and how do you factor in ongoing changes that come along the way?
Well, so we look at both the building and location, right? In real estate, it's location, location, location are the factors. It's a great location for a variety of reasons. It's a site that is visible and accessible to the entire Fox River Valley, and we, through our studies and through things that we've read, like Homes for a Changing Region, are aware that there is an increasing need for affordable housing throughout the Fox River Valley. And so this site is clearly available, recognizable to the people who are most likely to need that type of housing. But it's across the street from the forest preserve. It's across the street from the river. In the winter, you can see the river from there. It is close to shopping. It is close to schools, and so there are a lot of things about the location that are good from a residential redevelopment perspective. The building is obviously a challenging historic preservation puzzle, but that's one of our specialties as a development company, is to take on buildings like that. So we took on, for example, the St. Charles Hospital in Aurora, and that building, I think, lent itself a little more naturally to a residential redevelopment. As a hospital building, it had central corridors running through each floor. It had, 2 elevators at the middle of the building. It laid out in a way that we could kind of carve the building up into new apartments and keep a lot of the original spirit of the building. We had to be a little more creative at the Campana building. I think if the building had been a little bit deeper, if the building had been, it's about 100 feet deep, if the building had been 130 feet deep or 150 feet deep, we probably couldn't have taken this project on. As it is, these units are long and narrow units. They're loft-style units, but the building does lend itself to the program that we've proposed. It will have a central corridor that we are inserting into the building, and we can use that to serve the tower, which is kind of the main ceremonial stair for the building, and also parking entrances at the rear and at the north end of the building. And then there's an elevator that will serve all the way up to the 3rd floor that is off of the main entrance, off of the front drive. Having said that, we are certainly having to massage the building in a way that is technically challenging, but again will lead to, we think, some very interesting and unique units. We've emphasized throughout the process that these are not going to be units for everybody. If you're not interested in living in a loft-style unit, you're not going to be interested in living in this building. It's very simple. But we believe that there is a big enough market for what we're proposing here that there will be a natural market of people who want to live here. And we think the combination of market rate units and affordable units will provide a range of options for people who may be looking for that option, and this is serving a particular niche.
And can you explain a little bit about how the retail will be separated from the residential in the building?
So the building actually has three wings. The original building, which was 1937, was shorter than it is today. Today, there's a north and a south wing that were added on in the 1960s, I believe. And so now, from the entrance or from the front wall on Fabian Parkway all the way up to the Geneva boundary is over 600 feet. So it's a very long building. But there's also a wing in the west of the building. The back part of the building has a metal shed type structure. And so we are not really doing much to touch that metal shed. And there are some really nice recreational uses back there. There is a volleyball training facility. There's a personal fitness trainer back there. There's a chiropractor back there, and we're hoping and expecting that those uses will stay. We are expecting that the mattress store will remain part of the property. And then in the community conversation that we've been having, we've talked a lot about the cell phone towers. There are, I think, 16 cell antennas on the building right now. Those are providing important services. It's providing service to the whole residential redevelopment, to the west of the property, to the homestead, to the south of the property. They're important to 911 service, things like that. So it's important to maintain the infrastructure that they provide, but they're really ugly. And so I've compared them to cockroaches crawling all over the building. And so again, we have what we think is an appropriate and creative solution to basically bring all of those antennas up to the top of the tower and surround the top of the tower with what we call a sheath. It's essentially a fiberglass panel system that is manufactured to look like the masonry of the building, but it's not masonry. It's actually it's transparent to the cell signals, so the cell signals can get through it, even though it looks like it's part of the tower. It may not be a perfect solution in everybody's mind, but we think it is the best, most optimized solution to that part of the building. So in terms of technical separations, there'll be firewalls basically between the commercial pieces of the building and the residential parts of the building. I think we need a 3 or 4 hour separation, and we've designed those to satisfy those requirements.
Okay. Well, we're off to a great discussion so far. Time for a quick break.
Batavia Main Street. DowntownBatavia.com.
The King County Chronicle is your best source for news and information in print and online in the Tri-Cities and Caneland.
This is Chronicle Country. This is Chronicle Country. This is Chronicle Country.
This is Chronicle Country.
This is Chronicle Country.
The Drendel & Jansen's Law Group has practiced law in Aurora since 1961 and in Batavia since 1994.
We focus our energy on representing people and businesses and families in the local community.
We represent clients in Kane and surrounding counties in matters ranging from divorce to wills, business law to zoning.
We focus our efforts on planning and working towards positive resolutions for businesses and families.
When clients need someone to fight for their interests, we're ready, willing, and able to act as aggressive advocates to protect their interests.
Drendel & Jansen's Law Group with offices in Batavia and Aurora and located on the web at batavialaw.com.
Hi, I'm Tom Wangler, president of Confident Air. Regular maintenance can prolong the life of your furnace and keep your energy costs to a minimum. Plus, there's less of a chance of a breakdown on a cold winter night. Your furnace needs proper care and attention to keep it running smoothly, so you don't end up paying too much for heating during the cold winter months, or worse yet, with deadly carbon monoxide poisoning. We recommend an annual inspection to ensure safe operation. Confident Air, your trusted home comfort professionals since 1992.
Welcome back to Viewpoint. Today we're talking about the Campana proposal. David, could you talk a little bit about the requirements that you would have to meet if this proposal were to go through from a safety perspective?
Sure. Well, again, as we've noted in a lot of these meetings, we are being scrutinized by agencies at the local, the county, the state, and the federal level. So there are plenty of eyes, regulatory eyes, on this project. From a pure safety perspective, it generally goes back to the building code, right? Any project that you do needs to comply with the building code. And it's not only our architect signing off on that, we have an investor in this project who will hire their own architect to review our plans and specs to make sure that they're satisfied that we have done that. We've had a number of conversations with city staff, the city engineering staff, the building commissioner, about what they're expecting to see in this building. So we're addressing all of the technical aspects of the project. And as far as the environmental issues, people have raised different concerns about various environmental components over the years. Because this is an old building, it has lead paint in it. It had asbestos in it. It has a little bit of asbestos left, but the majority of the asbestos in this building was abated about almost 15 years ago now. People raise concerns about radon. The radon that we have measured in this building, that our professional consultants have measured, is actually below the level that when you have the little canister that you put in your basement when you're selling your house, it's below that threshold. Our view is that the environmental issues are fairly standard and very manageable. And that the building issues are best handled through professional review of the building code. And so that's what we intend to do.
Sure. And can you talk a little bit about how this project has chugged along and how your original proposal has kind of morphed along the way? Specifically talking about Geneva School District 304 and some of the things you've offered to that school district, considering some of the children who might live in this building would be attending those schools.
Right. So the proposal has evolved in the now 18 months or so that we have been working on this. We first met with City of Batavia staff in March of 2016 to talk about this project. So I think folks who say, what's the rush on this project, may not have that same perspective. The project has evolved from 64 units to 80 units, in part to address the sheer volume of the building. I think we have tightened up the design of our units and increased the market mix there. So the original proposal only had 4 market rate units. Our proposal now has 16 market rate units in it. Some of that's in response to conversations with the community. As far as the rest of the conversations go, for example, the conversations we've had with District 304 largely focus on safety of the students. The concern is with how the kids who might live in this building would get to school, primarily the Western Avenue School, because that is within the 1.5 mile radius that is considered a walking radius for them. So there were discussions about sidewalks and whether it's appropriate, makes sense to put in sidewalks to connect with the Geneva sidewalk system. Our view on the sidewalks is we do not want to have people feel like this project is imposing a sidewalk on them if they don't want a sidewalk in front of their house. And so the alternative that we offered, and this came through our discussions with District 304 and through conversations with the city, was that we will provide a van that will offer transportation in the morning and in the afternoon to kids who are going to the Western Avenue School from this site. And then on an as-available basis or an as-needed basis, if there are kids who are going early for music lessons or staying after for sports, we can look at providing that transportation as well. So it, frankly, would serve as an amenity for our residents as well, and we see that as a potential strength. Other kinds of things that have come up through the course of these conversations are the roadway connection between the front piece of the property and the side piece of the property. Right now, there is no way to drive a car from the oval that's on the Route 31 side to connect to the parking lot that's at the mattress store on Fabian Parkway. Our engineer told us, well, technically from an engineering perspective, we don't think that's required, but in conversations with the City of Batavia engineers and others, the city staff made it clear to us that piece of it really makes a lot of sense from the city's perspective, and it would help people get around on the site. It may potentially alleviate some of the traffic concerns. So in that case, we overruled our engineer and said, yeah, we think it makes sense to include that in there. As the owner of the project, we have that ability to do that. Through community conversations, again, a number of the residents, a number of the opponents, primarily of the project, thought that it really would be safer to have a sidewalk around the parking area at the front of the project. Again, we didn't think that was truly necessary, but at the request of the Plan Commission, we have added that to the project. So the project has evolved through the course of these conversations. And generally, our view is that while this process has involved more meetings and more hours of meetings than I expected initially, generally our view is that these kinds of processes result in a stronger project when the community feels like they've had more input there, and we're happy to engage in that kind of dialogue.
Sure, thank you.
Can I just make a comment about the school district? A lot of people in the beginning, I don't know, initially or maybe now, had a little bit of a question about why is it in the Geneva School District versus Batavia? And many of the school boundary lines were set back in the 1950s by farmland, by farm boundaries. And as a former school board member, I just want to say that when the issue comes up about safety for students, that is whether it's Batavia School District or Geneva School District, whatever school they go to, the school district will take care of those kids. Anytime you don't have a sidewalk, then the school district will provide the busing. And so they will come up, just like the Batavia Highlands. We bus the Batavia Highlands is part of the Geneva School District, again, because of those boundary lines. And so if there's no sidewalk, then they will be picked up by bus, and that is simply just by, I believe it's by law. So I think it's great that you want to have a van, but I want you also to know that too, because there's, after-school buses. I mean, I think that's important to know.
Yeah, and we're willing to do our part for the school district,
and I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's great.
Thank you. Laura, you had mentioned earlier that there were no, at least it sounded like, serious past proposals for the Campana building, but have there been talks of different things that could go on in that building, and how did those proposals relate to what Evergreen's proposing?
Well, I know of 3 that occurred over the last decades. One was a proposal to put a medical building, medical offices, but that was proposed to be built right on the front lawn. And I know from our discussions with Evergreen Group how strongly both the National Historic Preservation as well as the State Historic Preservation feel that that clear green lawn in the front with the racetrack parking is part of the architectural elements that make the building so special.
Sure.
And so that didn't go anywhere. There was another proposal that was residential in nature, but it was being proposed that the entire building itself be moved eastward toward 31.
Wow.
And apparently that proposed too much of a challenge for it to go forward. So I think that one died on the vine as well. And then the most recent proposal was perhaps within around the last 10 years, I think. There was a proposal to put a charter school there, but again, no actual proposal was submitted to the Community Development Department. So apparently, perhaps they found it financially not feasible.
Sure.
This has been the only proposal, really, that has actually been submitted to the city of Batavia.
And again, we've heard the term white elephant before. Margaret raises it again here. I mean, if any building is white elephant, this building is white elephant. But the problem with a white elephant is it needs a lot of feeding. And our analysis of this building is that at a minimum, it needs about $16 million worth of work. Our construction cost is more than $20 million because we have some bells and whistles that we are required to add as a result of our funding that others may not necessarily have. And it's very difficult for any proposal, whether it's a charter school or medical office space, to come up with the money given the market that it will serve, to make a $16 million construction job possible. And so the worry was always that you would continue to be putting Band-Aids on this building, and the building would continue to deteriorate over time. The owners, people who are selling us the building, I think have done a very good job of maintaining this building, which is a very challenging building to maintain, given that it's only partially occupied. But it's our firm belief that it is time now to make a serious investment in this building and give the building the comprehensive redevelopment that it needs, put the money into it, and the financing programs that we bring to it through the tax credits, through the housing tax credit, through the federal historic tax credit, allow us to make that kind of investment and not have to rely on really private market returns, which are not adequate to fund a $16 million redevelopment plan.
Sure. David, one of the concerns that people in the community have is that by allowing low-income families into this development, that it will diminish quality of life and property values will be lowered. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'll answer the property values issue first. Again, there was a lot of time during the community conversations. The vast majority of the opponents who addressed the property values issue cited one study that came out of Stanford University that saw a diminishment in property values. But we brought a number of other what we call meta-analysis. It's basically academic analysis of multiple articles that look at multiple academic studies of the effect of low-income housing or mixed-income housing on adjacent property values. And with only one or two exceptions, and so we looked at meta-analysis that looked at probably 30 different articles, the vast majority of them showed essentially no impact on property values, and some of those articles actually showed a positive impact on property values. So we don't think that the property values will be diminished. In fact, I would argue that not having to look at the backside or the side of a deteriorating industrial building and instead seeing a building that has been freshened up and made presentable for the next 20 years may potentially increase people's property values around there. And as far as the low income, the question of low income and quality of life, I guess I would challenge anybody who's asking that question to say exactly who are the low-income people that we're talking about. The low-income people, for example, work at the homestead. They are the people who help take care of the residents there. They're nursing assistants, they are janitors. People who are aides and administrative staff and janitors in both District 304 and in District 101, I think is yep. Batavia's district. You know, the people who serve food at the restaurants downtown. All of these categories of people, for the most part, have a pretty difficult time affording life in the Fox River Valley. And so this building, this kind of housing gives them some additional options so that they can live in the communities where they work. And I think that benefits everybody, because then not only are they, personally less economically stressed, but they are more personally invested in the communities where they're working. And it becomes a virtuous economic cycle. The thing that I refer back to in kind of looking over this whole process is the project that immediately preceded our project on the Plan Commission was an industrial project, and it was a small industrial business that was looking to expand in Batavia, and the Plan Commission was very supportive of this and asked them to make a couple of changes to the building, but for the most part it was bringing jobs to the community. And after the gentleman who was the owner of that company finished his proposal, I went up to him and I had a quick conversation with him. And without getting into details, I learned that for the most part, almost all the employees that he will have in this building would be eligible for the kind of housing that we are proposing here. And so, isn't that a great thing to have a new industry that's bringing new jobs to the community and housing that they can actually afford to live in, instead of living in Aurora or North Aurora or somewhere else, West Chicago, and have to clog up the roads with,
More traffic,
commuting back
yeah.
and forth to their jobs. So our view is that it really helps the overall regional economy to have this as a housing option, and because you have so few of those options here in the community.
Do you want to add anything to that, Laura?
No, I think very well stated.
Thank
and
you.
I think it goes with what I was saying before, that we want to make sure that we have a diverse housing stock here in Batavia. I think we do already, but as the community grows and we add more of the higher end type of units, such as is expected to be coming online in the downtown area with the One Washington Place project, we need to balance those and make sure that we're keeping an appropriate level of affordable housing as well.
Sure. Margaret, what is the future of the Campana building if the Evergreen proposal is not ultimately approved? What do you think will happen?
Well, the building will continue to go into a state of disrepair. Currently, right now, you have, as was said, a lot of work that needs to be done to the building, and we have funding for it. It is as it is a streamlined, modern style. It's a very unique style that you don't see very often. I'm not an architectural expert, but it was towards the end of the Art Deco era. When you look at the building, it just glows to me. The word Campana, when it was first built, was in green neon lights. It has the aerodynamics that you have when you think about cruise ships, and when you go back and look at some of the skyscrapers, Art Deco skyscrapers in Chicago, you have that horizontal feel of it. And then the glass block is just so unique. And the great part about what their proposal includes is that the glass block on the building is translucent. And so, he talked a little bit about the windows and everything, but they don't make that type of glass block anymore. And so what they want to do is for some of those blocks that have cracked and need to be redone, they're going to use some of that glass block from the back of the building. So, it's just an amazing building that I fully believe that it is one of a kind. It's, a multi-purpose building, multi-use building, and, at the end of the day, it is a great use for affordable housing.
Sure, thank you. This proposal has gone through many stages so far, and it's been discussed for quite some time. Laura, when do you suppose this might come before the full City Council for a vote?
I think the earliest that would happen is at the October 2nd meeting. Of course, it had to go through Historic Preservation and also the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals prior to coming before the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole last week held their first meeting, at which they heard opinions from the public to assist them in their decision making. Tonight I expect to be more about deliberations over their decision whether to approve the project, and if they do, then they're going to be recommending approval by the full City Council on October 2nd. If they're unable to finish their deliberations this evening, then it would go on to the October 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting, and then to the October 16th full City Council meeting. But I do want to point out that there's been a tremendous amount of community conversation about this. It began back in May when Evergreen Group came and gave a presentation to our City Council just to hear whether, they would be in favor of considering such a project at the Campana site. It's an important thing that a developer who's going to expend tremendous resources in development of a project know that as a city that we're interested in hearing more. And then the meeting this evening will actually be the 10th public meeting that we have had to discuss this. Several of the meetings that were part of the public hearing before the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals had well over 100 people in attendance, and not just people from the city of Batavia, but also people from the city of Geneva who, living adjacent to the project, had many things that they wanted to make sure that the Plan Commission was aware of and considered before making their decision. And a testament to everybody involved in the process, both the developer, the commissions, but also those members of the public who took their time to learn about the project and ask thoughtful questions and give very thoughtful and researched opinions. It's been a very interesting project to watch, and I think that when City Council makes their decision, they will truly have available to them all the information that they need to make the best choice for the city of Batavia.
Thank you. Well, we've reached the end of our discussion, and it's time for final thoughts. David, let's start with you. How would you sum up today's conversation about your proposal?
We are still very excited about this project, and everywhere we go, we want to be good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors to the city of Batavia. We want to be good neighbors to the city of Geneva, to the unincorporated parts of the county. We hope that if it is approved, that over time, that those who have opposed the project will allow me and my staff to sit with them and kind of help allay whatever concerns they may have. We do think that on balance, this is going to be a terrific project for the community and for the building, and we look forward to making sure that it happens.
Thank you. Margaret?
Sure. For those that are interested more in the architecture and the history of it, the organization I work for, Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley, on Sunday, October 8th from 1 to 5, we'll be giving tours. The tours will be on the hour-and-a-half hour. We'll simply focus on the history and the architecture. So if people are very interested in Streamline Moderne, if they have questions, we have some great artifacts from the museums, local museums. They certainly should come because I think they'll get a great idea of what a beautiful building it is and how important it is to be preserved.
Do they need to register in advance if they want to take a tour, or just show up?
Just show up.
All right.
On the hour-half hour. If you're late, you go to the next group.
Sure. And Laura, final thoughts from you.
Well, this is an important decision for our community, and you will see that played out this evening, and then also as City Council decides whether or not to approve this project. And we encourage anybody who would like to be part of that discussion to attend this evening's meeting, which is at 7:30 p.m. at the City Council Chambers, 100 North Island Avenue in Batavia. And then the City Council meeting will be October 2nd, also at 7:30. City Council Chambers. But we hope that people will get more involved in important decisions like this that are being made all the time by your City Council.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our guests on this episode of Viewpoint. To watch previous episodes of Viewpoint, you can go to the BATV website at mybatv.com. If you have a topic you would like to see discussed on a future episode of Viewpoint, you can contact us at 630-937-5413 or by email at info@mybatv.com. I'm Kathy Balcazar. See you next time on Viewpoint.